So my oldest daughter wanted a fairy dress to wear for her 5th birthday. She is obsessed with fairies right now, so I am doing my best to make her a lovely, whimsical dress. And now I wanted to get this dress, or at least the bulk of it, done before our 4th child was born, but that did not happen. So I managed to do one of the sleeves and put together all of the embroidery motif designs back in April before the 4th child was born. But there are too many other things going on with the business to make any more progress though. So now I'm doing my best to create this fairy dress with a fresh newborn, and I still have a business to grow and run. But you only turn 5 once, so here goes my best effort. Let's begin June 17th, the fairy leaves. I've got 1 week until her birthday, so I really need to get going on this project. I quickly gathered the supplies needed to do the embroidery work and threw them into this little lunch bag I found in the playroom. I couldn't find a spare tote bag, but I came across about 10 kiddo bags. It's just how life works, isn't it? So I've got some jewelry wire, some metallic thread, plenty of floche and beads, and these adorable little beaded dragonflies. And I take the silk organza and I transfer the leaf design onto that. I put that in my embroidery hoop, and my initial thought is to secure some wire to the perimeter of the leaf and then use the buttonhole stitch around that, and then I'll cut the leaves away. But this was going way too slow. Between the business responsibilities and my uncooperative new work partner, well, it had been 2 days and I only got through 1.5 leaves. So something had to give. So scratch that. June 19th, the new leaf plan. So my new plan, bring in the sewing machine with the help of a sound machine. I live with these little boogers in the background when I have a little baby. So I'm thinking of stitching 2 layers together to make these leaves and kind of conceal the raw edges of the organza. So I transfer all the leaves onto the organza, and now I normally use a friction and heat activated pen, but my last one was at the office and I am not about to let that stop me. My helper was asleep and everybody else was at the park. So I am just using a regular pen and hoping for the best, and I figure I'll be able to, remove this later, I hope. So I sew around the edges of the leaf, and then little Everly stayed asleep for most of that in the baby wear. But once she woke up, I just switched to nursing her so I could finish up those leaves because Mama was getting the leaves done. All right. So I'm thinking that I would just cut around the leaves, leaving a 1/4 inch, and then turn them around to conceal those raw edges. But I did that and I don't like how it looks. So instead, I'm just going to cut around them to clean things up. And that's just one less step to do. Isn't that great? Since it's already, June 19th. And I also think that a little bit of fraying would actually be a good thing in this case. It would give some texture and whatnot to those little leaves. So I am rolling with it. But for now, my helper is waking up, so I got to tend to her instead. Hand embroidery, June 20th, the fairy edition. Meanwhile, back at my office with my little helper, we are running out of time for her birthday on the 25th at this point. So I am doing things in order of importance, and we will see how much I can get done. Of course, the front of the bodice is fairly important, so I'm starting there and tracing the motifs. And this time with that friction heat activated pen. I love these little things and I really need to order more. I also set up this little embroidery space. It is much nicer than trying to balance everything while embroidering on that bed that my older kiddos use when they're at my office. I also love the big windows for all their yummy natural light. So little Everly does her best to nap in the baby carrier while I hurry to get as many stitches done as I can. I'm using floche for all of this embroidery work and mixing in beads. I absolutely adore Swarovski crystals. Nothing compares to their clarity and color, and I have a fairy pack on my website. I was planning on using beads anyways. I think it goes fairly well with the whole fairy motif whimsical thing, but particularly now, they're helping to fill the spaces in quickly. And I need all the time-saving tricks I can get at this point. So back at my house, I am preparing the skirt to be sewn. The dress will have 3 layers to the skirt, and the first layer will be out of the blush pink silk de Bione. which I always mispronounce. Somebody in the comments is going to be like, you pronounce it this way. Thank you. My mind is set. My memory does not work that way. It's not so easy to erase, and I'm human too. Anywho, that's going to give it volume as well as coverage, since, well, the silk organza doesn't provide much coverage. Then there will be 2 layers of the silk organza, and I will get into more on that later in the video. So I continue the embroidery June 21st, and I think I can. So the embroidery for the bodice continues. Everly is still a fairly fresh baby at this point, around 2 or 3 weeks old, and she's taken to the baby carrier all right. Sometimes she naps in there, and other times I need to nurse her and do that whole nap-nurse situation for her to get a decent nap. It's literally 1 stitch at a time, and I remind myself not to get overwhelmed. I have done enough big projects in the past. It's literally 1 stitch at a time, and it all adds up. Somehow everything always comes together, so I just stay the course, find the enjoyment. After all, this is why I do that, right? 4 babies later, and my tired self doesn't even know. So I sway and rely on those sound machines, getting as many stitches as I can before she wakes up. Oh, and just when I thought I was done with the bodice embroidery, I looked at it and I realized that somewhere along the way I grabbed the wrong shade of green. So half of the bodice leaves are in one shade of green on the left-hand side, and the other shade of green is on the right-hand side. Like you could draw a line down the middle of this bodice to separate the leaves, right? The 2 different greens. So I'm trying to fix this by joining the 2 greens together with some shading them. Talk about a tired mama moment. But back to those leaves, June 22nd, on to embroidering those leaves under a sleeping baby. There's only 11 leaves total, and I did 10 of them while in bed under a sleeping newborn as she nursed naps. And I saved this last leaf for you fine folks at home. I started by weaving the green flourish around those stitches, and yes, I used white thread, and that's fine. I'm a busy mama who needs like 5 more pair of hands, so sue me. Seriously. And then I do the stem stitches for those veins. And finally, I do the chain stitch around the edges since I think it needs some additional thickness. So time out June 23rd. At this point, I got all the hand embroidery done for the bodice, and the leaves are ready to be attached to the sash, and I've got the skirt pieces that are mostly prepared. So progress was being made until I realized that the 4th of July was right around the corner. So I ordered some delightful fabric, thinking I would just run it through my machine while I was still pregnant. You just need something you can run through your machine. So Funny, right? So let's just run that through the machine with a newborn so we can be patriotic. Damn it, and light the sparklers. June 25th rolled around, which was the big birthday day, and we celebrated with a fairy cake.
Birthday to you. Oh, hold on. Daisy. You make a wish. All right. We gotta wash those off. Daisy. Daisy. Daisy.
Back to it, June 29th. After getting sidetracked by the 4th of July outfits, some other business items, I was back to this dress. Rinsing off the ink of those leaves, giving the green silk organza a rip where I think the belt should go, and then getting them all arranged onto this little belt until I liked the way they looked. I was just pinning them in place, and I will sew them together later. So then I removed the bodice from the embroidery hoop, cut around the edges of the front as well as the back, giving up on being able to do that little bit of embroidery work on the back. I sewed the two together, and I joined the organza bodice layer with the silk dupannone layer, and I joined those Dior copied sleeves into the mix as well. So putting the skirt together June 30th. Now that the bodice and sleeves were together, I could focus on finishing the skirt. I joined the base layer of the silk dupannone together. I'm using 2 panels, each selvage edge to selvage edge for a super full skirt. And I know there's going to be somebody in the comments who thinks that I shouldn't be using a sewing machine while nursing a baby. You do you, boo. You do you. And I did not ask. Okay, thanks. So once I had the bottom 2 layers gathered up, I held the top layer of silk organza up to see where I should rip that. I only wanted it about an inch or 2 shorter than the other layers, and it looked like that to me from my perspective, but it turned out to be a lot shorter. Whatever, it is fine. I'm working under a baby, newly postpartum, and I'm definitely giving myself all the grace with this number. And as easy as it would be to skip the hand embroidery on this part, being 5 days post birthday and all, I really didn't want to make that sacrifice. So I just did a handful of motifs. I definitely wanted to do more, but I'm also trying to be realistic. Once again, I stitched those motifs just using some plain quick stitches, Swarovski crystals, and Everly's help. We stitch in the sewing corner, in the hallway, in the kitchen. Back in the sewing corner on the half wall that will someday be finished with a pretty piece of wood on top. Y'all get the drift. I try to use every opportunity since the single stitches really do add up. Once the embroidery was done, then I placed the dots to mark where I wanted those gold seed beads. I'm hoping they bring the pixie dust. So finally putting this thing together July 7th. So finally, I am joining the skirt layers together with the dress, putting the finishing touches on and doing the little bits of hand finishings. One of my favorite parts of garment making for children was finally here. But then it rained for several days. So that favorite part had to wait between the rain, the sewing business obligations, and taking care of a newborn. The birthday girl finally got to have a fun photo shoot on July 17th. I took her with Everly that morning, and then Daddy took her back out that afternoon exploring through some hiking trails, which I am so glad he did. They had a blast together, and we have these sweet photos thanks to it. Check out this video on the making of the Dior copied sleeves for this fairy dress. Happy birthday, sweet girl. You are loved more than you ever will know. And now I need to go tend to Everly. Thanks for watching, y'all. Catch you in the next one.